Her dream of being in the most famous idol group in Japan came true, but in reality, it may have just been a complete nightmare. Mistreatment and humiliation because of her age? We're taking another peek at AKB48's murky past. In this episode of Otaku Files, we talk about Ohori Megumi. Most of us outside of Japan may not be aware of some of the more interesting personalities within the Japanese otaku landscape, so I thought I'd do a little video series and try to shed some light on these individuals. This is Otaku Files. As I mentioned in my video on Shimazaki Haruka, AKB48 marketed themselves as being idols you can meet. And among other things, there is another important aspect to their appeal: youth. Of course, with them needing to dance and sing all day, being young certainly helps with their recovery, but I don't think that's necessarily what their fanbase may care about. Now, in terms of age, some girls can be as young as 12 when they enter the group, and typically members will graduate sometime in their early 20s to pursue other goals. So in that respect, this member I'm going to talk about was actually pretty unique. Ohori Megumi, whose nickname is Meetan, became a member of AKB48 at age 22, debuting in 2006. Due to this, she would face hardships that she and her family could never have imagined, in one of the worst open public displays of mistreatment I have ever heard of from a mainstream idol group.
このシングル CD が1万枚売れなかったら AKB 卒業 AKB 卒業
AKB48 を卒業.
Born in Chiba but raised in the Shinagawa ward of Tokyo, Meetan was apparently quite a normal and obedient kid, eventually gaining an aspiration to be in the entertainment world. When she was in her second year of high school, she would become a model for the teenager-orientated magazine My Birthday. She would also go down the gravure route too, going under the showbiz name of Matsushima Megumi, and it seems she even released a couple of DVDs too. Meetan has talked about this in her book/essay, Saikaso Idoru, Akirame nakereba ashita wa aru, but I'm not sure how many AKB48 fans were aware of this. However, I'm going to assume that this might not have been a long-term thing, as after she graduated from her junior college, she supposedly worked more average part-time jobs. According to this AKB48 TV program, that's when she came across an ad for the AKB48 audition and decided to apply by sending in her resume. She would then get a phone call saying that she had passed, but not for being an actual member of AKB48, but to be hired as a staff member working at the cafe set up within the AKB48 theatre. Meetan, though, didn't give up on her dream. Not wanting to lose to girls younger than her, she decided to wait for the next round of auditions. For the audition, Meetan, then aged 22, had to dance within a group of 5. As you might have guessed, the other members were much younger than her, including one that was just 10 years old. Despite that, she gave it her all and amazingly managed to pass the audition. AKB48 actually has a number of teams within it. Meetan would join Team K. That would be the second team formed within AKB48. She finally made it, right? Well, not exactly. Fans of AKB48 or other major idol groups probably already know this, but for a song release, not every member necessarily gets to sing in it. Usually there is a selection process known as senbatsu that the members need to go through, and unfortunately, time and time again, Meetan wouldn't be chosen. Not only that, during their performances on stage, while her juniors would take center stage, Meetan would often find herself being positioned at the back to the far left corner. This is where literally you would have the least amount of light shone on you. This place would even be nicknamed the Ohori Zone. How charming. This complete lack of exposure also led to something else. As I've talked about in the Shimazaki Haruka video, AKB48 held handshaking events where you could shake the hand of your favorite member, but for Meetan, nobody stood in line to shake her hand. Apparently, a fan of another member even said to her in a demeaning way that he would shake her hand as a favor to her, which led to Meetan shedding tears. Suffice to say, she was very frustrated and did think about quitting a number of times, but also felt that she was being pathetic whenever she did.
眉毛とかエリピョンとかの間に挟まれた時にはもう最悪ですよこれ。
However, that's not all. There was another issue. Money. Or should I say, the lack thereof. I'm not sure how much AKB48 members get paid now, but Meetan says at first, everyone's monthly pay was just 45,000 yen. To put things in perspective, a generally low-paying job in Tokyo would be around 230,000 yen. I don't think 45,000 yen would even cover my shopping bills for a month. I mean, the starting age for new members is usually 12 to 16, so I guess that makes sense. Meetan was doing something she loved, so she was just thankful for that, but acknowledged that her friends who did ordinary jobs were getting paid 5 times more than she was. Of course, on her salary, there was no way she could afford a place to rent, so initially she was just traveling to the AKB48 theater in Akihabara from her hometown in Chiba. This was a 2.5-hour journey, and as you can imagine, this was financially quite taxing, but I'm sure mentally it was no walk in the park either. Luckily, her parents agreed to help out on rent, enabling her to eventually rent a place in Akihabara. But of course, that didn't mean that Meetan wasn't still broke. To survive, she would often take home any complimentary bentos that were left over after the members were done with them. When there were none left, she would eat bean sprouts that were being sold for 18 yen at a cheap supermarket near the theater, or go for bentos that would end up being half price later on at night to have as her meals for the next day. For members to get paid more, they needed to make sales, which meant selling things like photos of themselves. This usually results in a pay gap between popular and not so popular members. Not exactly the AKB48 dream Meetan was likely hoping for. Things started to change when she would start appearing on AKB48's late-night TV show. This initially wasn't so often, but she would start catching some attention for things that happened on the show. For example, when this slide supposedly malfunctioned and Meetan was stuck at the top. Coupled with this, the host Sata Masaki and even other members would start calling Meetan Baba, which is actually a disrespectful way to refer to an older woman around middle age. Meetan was probably only around 24 years old at that time, but it was a very clear way of distinguishing her from the other younger members. Sata Masaki would even call her Kusobaba, which is honestly just plain rude, but also part of Sata Masaki's character, I guess. Now, this was a way to bring her into the picture, and some say this also helped achieve that, but Meetan did mention in an interview years later that it was really hurtful to be called those sort of things. She also started to adopt a certain character, one that was more bold and quote-unquote sexy, kind of veering off the typical AKB48 idol image and actually echoing more her gravure days. Then AKB48's producer Akimoto Yasushi proposed a certain plan, one where Meetan would release a song called Amai Kokansetsu under the name Ohori Megumi. By the way, this song has some pretty spicy lyrics. She would then be given a goal to sell 10,000 copies of this song within 1 month. If she failed to do so, she would be forced to graduate, which basically means to get fired from the group. Whether she really had a choice in accepting or not, I'm not sure, but this project would start in October 2008. However, the promotion tactics that she was made to do as part of this whole thing was not nice to say the least. For example, on the show, Meetan was made to take a checkup, which involved having an endoscopy. Like, what the hell? Also, she would be shown going all over Japan to get people to buy a copy of her song, but the outfit that she was wearing was essentially lingerie. She would even be shown pushing a cart of her CDs in that lingerie. There was just this overall theme of her being desperate to sell copies. This was pretty degrading if you ask me, and this stuff being televised on the show apparently caused a lot of issues between Meetan and her family. At the end of this whole thing, she did actually manage to reach her goal and stay in AKB48. That was until the following year in August 2009, when it would be announced that she would be transferred to a new group, started by Akimoto Yasushi, known as SDN48. Meetan would graduate from AKB48 in February 2010, beginning her SDN48 activities a couple of months later. She would also join a talent agency known as Hori Pro. SDN48 had more older members and more matched Meetan's sexy image. She apparently was also one of the more popular members of the group. However, SDN48 would end up disbanding in March 2012. The group lasted for around 2.5 years. Meetan would also make an appearance at AKB48's anniversary concert in December that year. Some say it was pretty low to transfer her to SDN48, as it just seemed to be a way to get rid of her. But you could also argue that it was Akimoto Yasushi's way of trying to let her keep being an idol. You can let us know what you think in the comments section below. Now, Meetan is happily married and has 2 children. She has apparently left Horipuro earlier this year and is not so much in the showbiz spotlight anymore, but she does seem to be really happy now. Anyway, that's going to do it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for this suggestion. Another AKB48 video. I know, we're going further down this rabbit hole. If you do want to see more videos on AKB48, let me know in the comment section below. It was really interesting to learn about Meetan's story. I'm glad that things worked out for her because, man, she went through a lot of crap. That's all I can say. Thanks again, guys. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Peace.